Thank you.
Thank you. Is that better?
Yes.
Go on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence, and I've got Councillor Olivia Hunter and being substituted by Councillor Werner.
Was there any apology?
Thank you, Councillor Werner. Item 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable pecuniary interest and interest other than pecuniary interest as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act 2011 in relation to matters on the agenda. Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm declaring interest in LW/24/0017 as I'm a member of the Church, so I will take part in discussion of votes.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Agenda item 3, public participation. To deal with any questions or brief presentations from members of the public in accordance with relevant legislation and Seaford Town Council policy. In accordance with Town Council policy, members of the public wishing to speak on individual planning applications may do so immediately for each planning application. At this point, I'm going to bring forward agenda item 5, which I think most of you are here to speak on, and then after we've done that, I'll go back to agenda item 4, which is the planning applications. So, agenda item 5 on page 6. And to present information on the latest local plan consultation document issued by Lewes District Council with information and comments to facilitate a formal response from the Town Council. I'm now going to hand over to our planning officer.
Thank you. I'm Jeff Johnson, planning officer for the Town Council. Just got a couple of quick points to bring out for public speakers that I know have been lined up and are keen to address us on the local plan issues. Firstly, there's been a lot of concern, I know, about the inclusion of Chiltern Way in the land availability study, which has fed information into the local plan process. Just a couple of things to say about that. We've had several people come to us saying, I oppose Lewis's proposal to develop Chiltern Way. Because once you get mention of the fact that Chiltern Way is included in the land availability statement, then one thing leads to another. And a lot of people get the idea that there's an active intention to develop 40 or whatever dwellings on Chiltern Way, which most of you know is not the case. But I think I need to clarify that in this stage of the local plan, it's a strategic measure to, if you like, measure the capacity of the Lewes district and see how many houses or how many dwellings can reasonably be developed given the capacity of the available land. And there's no specific allocations. Yes, there is concern about the fact that Chiltern Way or the land of Chiltern Way is included in the land availability statement and described as deliverable and developable. But there's no active move to develop it or included in the allocations. That's not to say there won't be concerns from the residents and I'm sure from the members about it, and that will be discussed later on. But that's the first point to make. Secondly, just briefly, I think most residents will be aware, but just in case there are some that aren't aware, there's an additional public drop-in organised by Lewes District Council for queries on the local plan consultation that have been organised quite late in the day to tie in with the extension to the consultation to the 19th of February. And that drop-in meeting will be on Saturday the 10th of February, 10:30 to 12:30. So if anybody after tonight's meeting has got any remaining queries about the process, at the Downs Leisure Centre from 10:30 to 12:30 on Saturday the 10th of February. So that's an opportunity, an additional opportunity for concerned residents to go and actually face the Lewes District Council officers who have drawn up a consultation document and raise queries with them. Seaford Town Council is simply a consultee, just like the residents of the town. They have no responsibility for drawing up the document. They are an important consultee, obviously, but merely a consultee. So any questions you have been put directly for Lewes District Council, you can put those to the officers at this drop-in session on Saturday the 10th. That's all I have to say. I know there are other speakers wanting to get going, so I'll hand you back to the chairman and she can introduce that.
Thank you. So, who would like to speak on? And can I just ask that try not to repeat what's gone before? That'd be great, because that will help with time. And wait till we've got the microphone, so you can use the microphone. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Councillors and members of the public. I would like to speak on agenda item 5. Is it not? Good evening. I would like to speak on agenda item 5 as a member of Field and as a Seaford resident about the proposed local plan. This plan will form the basis for planning in our town. It's the biggest thing to be happening here, and as residents we need to have a voice. Nadine Din, the planning lead officer, explained that the council, Lewes District Council, did not want to be having discussions on site suitability after the proposal stage. So now is the time to have our say, and we want to support our councillors in how we do this. Regeneration of the coastline has already appeared to be substituted in some of the documents as being coastal intensification, and this affects 77% of the people, as that's where they live in the coastal area. We understand the government has a set target of 604 homes a year in our district, and if sites are not met, then the government can step in. We urge that these figures are looked at, bearing in mind comments that were by Jeff, the planner on the document that he submitted, our MP Maria Coalfield, and the Office of National Statistics that are suggesting that the district is declining. The plan was released a few weeks before Christmas, meaning most people deferred looking at it until the new year. In addition, the data has been a slightly moving target in that some policies have been renamed and some have been amended as late as the 11th of January 2024. As a group, in 22 days, we've given 1,000 hours reading the policies, collating information, writing speeches, engaging with residents and councillors. We leaflet dropped approximately 400 houses. No one was aware of the proposed plan, and 15 to 20% of the households in the immediate area had a form of disability or caring role preventing them from getting to the drop-in or to meetings in the evening, and this was sad to see. The New Haven drop-in was not fit for purpose, no disabled access, no signage, no lighting. However, we are pleased that this has been addressed, and there is a drop-in in Seaford, and the consultation has been extended, and we thank you for that. The website for the plan is not user-friendly. The huge raft of attachments are at the bottom of a very long page. Figure 10, which was in the first document, has only a small blur, which is only visible at 150% to actually see some of what is being developed, or potentially. There are no hyperlinks on the NAA map, and the development capacity study has no map at all. It makes it quite a difficult document. The questionnaire for the consultation is complicated, and the best way to submit responses is via an online platform that often crashes. The majority of people that have been leaflet dropped are struggling with accessing the information and understanding the policies and configuring their responses into this complicated questionnaire. The The equality analysis for this policy states all sections of the community need to be engaged if we are to prepare a forward-looking plan, and additional measures should be taken to reach hard-to-reach groups. Please can the questionnaires be available at the drop-ins and maybe staff to help people complete them. The revised statement of community involvement details that local residents get an opportunity to have their say and local people are encouraged to take part. However, data from the issues and consultation paper stated that stakeholders, as members of the public who had answered some questions, comprised 3,710, but 1,479 of these were residing outside the district. That's nearly 40% that were not local. We need to ensure that we have good, accessible and reliable information and supportive governance, and we ask for your help in how we go forward with the questionnaire. Thank you.
So, if you don't mind, I prefer not to stand. Again, I wish to speak in respect of item 5 on the agenda. I refer to the Lewes District Council Development Capital Study, which is buried within the paperwork which accompanies the consultation. This document identifies sites with potential for redevelopment. Inclusion in the study does not necessarily mean development is imminent or would be approved. However, we're concerned that this will be a vehicle by which speculative developers will be able to identify prime locations in Seaford on which they wish to build. A privately owned site can be brought to the attention of Lewes planners for inclusion in this report, not only by the landowner, but by persons with an interest in the land. This could include estate agents and potential developers. This study is in the public domain, and we would question what effect the identification of a site for development has on neighbouring properties. The study so far has identified 3 owner-occupied homes within Seaford, 2 of which are within the Chinkton Lane Conservation Area, and 1 within an area of established character. All 3 properties identified would necessitate demolition of the existing homes and developing within the gardens. Lewes Planning provide a report on the potential for each site. We note the reports include an overly optimistic appraisal, effectively supporting the development with a helpful specified number of dwellings that the council consider could be built on each plot. This would clearly assist any developer. Constraints appear to be glossed over in the commentary. For example, the 2 properties are in Chinkton Lane are accessed by an unnamed private road at the front and encased by other houses at the rear. So the question arises as to how the 23 proposed properties could be connected to a public highway. It seems strange that Lewes have included them in this study when this question of access is not resolved. The other property is in South Wales and adjoins the site of Chinkton Field, which has already been identified for development. This land immediately adjoins the National Park, and bizarrely, Lewes District Council state that the redevelopment could contribute to the setting of the National Park, an opinion very few would agree with. There is a suspicion that these sites have been identified by interested parties to provide prestigious dwellings that will maximise profits for developers. We're concerned this may be a route by which estate agents and developers can initiate a process by which redevelopment can take place in gardens, contrary to item 128D of the National Planning Policy Framework, which states planning policies and decisions should support development that makes efficient use of the land, taking into account the desirability of maintaining an area's prevailing character and setting, including residential gardens. We fear that this process will gather momentum and larger properties will be targeted as they will provide an easy option for developers rather than using derelict sites that are not so attractive. For example, the Dane Valley project site or the infamous Talent Parade.
Thank you, Chair. I wish again to speak in respect to item 5 on the agenda. The issues and options consultation regarding the Lewes local plan, which has already taken place, suggests that the intensification of development in the coastal strip, which of course includes Seaford, will well be an unwelcome contribution to meeting the housing target imposed on the Lewes District Council. And I hope, of course, that Seaford Town Council will do everything within its power to push back against this proposed option to ensure that Seaford doesn't carry a disproportionate burden of housing development in the future. But Seaford, as we know, inevitably under considerable pressure to provide sites for new homes. Now, referring to Mr Johnson's report, meeting future housing targets will likely involve building in gardens of existing houses, and in certain cases demolishing perfectly sound family homes. And I think it's ironic that what makes Seaford an attractive place to live also perversely renders it vulnerable to this type of speculative development. So how do we challenge this type of development? Well, as we know already, we have a Seaford neighbourhood plan. This plan was produced following 3 years of hard work by the community, which identified many features which give Seaford its distinctive special character. And it formulated controls to preserve this. In creating the neighbourhood plan, the community identified, amongst other things, sites of future development, general design guidelines, and introduced recognition of 8 areas of established character to ensure that distinctive features of Seaford will be maintained. The neighbourhood plan is an excellent example of local democracy at work, and I think it was anticipated that it would continue until 2030. However, delving down into the guidance from the Lewes District Council, it now advises that the neighbourhood plan will need to be reviewed to be in alignment with the proposed new local plan. It therefore suggests that our current neighbourhood plan perhaps can't exist in its current form. So my questions are therefore as follows. Can a neighbourhood plan be revised to provide a similar level of protection against unsuitable development as it currently does? Indeed, are preparations perhaps already in place to look at revising the Seaford neighbourhood plan? And who will be involved in this process? Obviously, as we know, Seaford residents have a voice in drafting the plan as they did before. Is this still going to be the case? And what sort of timescale is involved in this? If we have a revised neighbourhood plan, can that be implemented at the same time that the new Lewes local plan is adopted? If that's not possible, of course, then perhaps Seaford will be even further at risk from speculative developers. It seems to me that without the provisions of a robust neighbourhood plan, Seaford will be transformed by unsuitable developments, and there's already evidence that developers may well cherry-pick sites to provide a maximum return on their investment, which obviously won't be in the best interest of the town. Lastly, perhaps, can I make a plea? Please don't listen to those who say about this process, nothing to worry about, nothing to see here. It seems to me, going into all this paperwork, there's everything to worry about as far as the future of Seaford is concerned, and there's plenty to see, in fact, huge amounts of paperwork. And I'm afraid I feel that very little of it is encouraging as far as Seaford is concerned. Thank you.
I'd like to draw the attention of the Council to certain documents made in, comments made in item 5 of the local plan, sub-document the shared transport evidence base. I did a calculation on 2 cars per dwelling of the 604 dwellings per annum Lewes districts meant to produce. And that would result in over $1.5 million additional... Sorry? Oh, right. Sorry, I feel like a rock star. You see, I do this quite often. Anyway, what it would result in is over $1.5 million extra vehicle movements per annum in the district. This shared transport evidence document highlights that the roads, the A26, 27 and 259, are already at between 95 and 75% capacity, and that if either of the options in the local plan were adopted, all these roads would become overloaded. And we all know that the 259 is bad when it does jam up, and the only road in the district to go north is the 26th, and the Bellingham roundabout is also highlighted in this document as being at capacity at peak times. East Sussex Fire and Rescue have said any more congestion will have a detrimental impact on their response times, so it's obviously going to affect all the emergency services. The green alternatives in the document are the usual stuff of walking, cycling, bus use, and the fine if it isn't raining or the snow's there, the roads haven't been gritted, because people will naturally default back to the car. And then people will use electric vehicles, which are heavier, and the increase in traffic will destroy our roads even more than they are already. And there's no suggestion of how they will deal with that particular problem, but it does highlight that 259 as one of the roads that will suffer the most. I mean, my concern is that if the coastal strip is forced to cover the majority of the quota of home building required by the Lewis district, we, especially the residents of Seaford, will suffer from overcrowded organ-obtained roads which will have a detrimental effect on our lives, our health, our town and our natural surroundings. Thank you.
Hello, I wish to speak in relation to agenda item 5. In the words of Sussex Wildlife Trust, Seaford Head is the best place to enjoy spectacular views of the Seven Sisters and Cookmere Valley. A short walk from the car park at Southfield Barn takes you to one of the most magnificent views of the Seven Sisters, a wonderful undulating line of chalk cliffs. Its fame is spread worldwide and attracts tourists from across the globe. We consider this as one of the primary sites in the whole of the Lewis district, yet it is strangely ignored in the supporting documentation for the consultation. When mentioning cultural provisions for Seaford, the Lewis Leisure and Retail Study only identifies the Crypt, a small art gallery, and the Seaford Museum. It fails to mention the South Wales National Park, Seaford Head Nature Reserve, the Sussex Heritage Coast, the King Charles Coastal Path, and South Park. As I'm sure you're aware, the latter is the subject to a working party consulting on its future and its role in the community at the moment, that being South Park. The number of visitors is increasing at an alarming rate, with the area being promoted worldwide as a place of outstanding natural beauty and with easy reach of London. This can be evidenced by the photographs of the access road, as in the concrete road up, and Chington Way becoming an overspill car park throughout the year. And that, coupled with the number of coach and organised tours being advertised on the internet, only adds to the growing pressure being put on the area. Seaford Town Council relies on the income from filming. If you allow the field, Chington Field, which adjoins the only access to the South Hill, to be built on, you will impact the days, times filming can go ahead. As residents will tell you, the film crews arrive in convoys of large trucks with trailers and flashing lights at unsociable hours. Many television programmes and blockbuster films have been filmed here. The latest of note is a Netflix production due for release this March called The Three-Body Problem, based on a highly popular Chinese sci-fi trilogy. It was made by the Game of Thrones teams and is expected to be even more popular. It was filmed over a month, and from the trailer that we've seen, features the Coast Guard costumes in its first episode. The latest trend for holidays visiting film locations will only increase footfall to the area, and with no controllable facilities to support it, the effect could be devastating. This has already been highlighted back in 2018 in the New York Times feature entitled How Asian Social Media Transformed the Quiet UK Walking Spot. The road alongside the field is one of the few vehicular access points to the South Downs, and it is crucial for people, especially those with a disability, for gaining access to this iconic viewpoint. It is also frequented by many walkers, bird watchers and picnickers, and more importantly, it is used by emergency services to gain access. We should not forget Walk the Chalk, which was supported by LBC and others. Based at South Barn, the event was promoted celebrating the local heritage, history and folklore, but it brought with it many of its own challenges. Seaford is a town by the sea, a stunning rural attraction. But despite this, Lewis District Council is ignoring it. Most local councils would be delighted to have such a well-loved and iconic site on their doorstep and would see it as a privilege that must be protected and facilitated at all costs. Surely, Lewis District Council is not considering allowing the building of a housing estate or a beautiful approach to this inspirational, internationally renowned and unique site. Thank you.
Good evening. I also refer to item 5 on the agenda, the local plan, and would like to speak about climate change, starting with comments on the Lewis District Climate Change Study 2023, where policies include the following. Policy 7.6, which aims to reduce the reliance on private transport and the combustion engine. How will the reliance on private transport be mitigated? One of the local primary schools will necessitate crossing the A259, a very busy road as we know, which is already near capacity. Parents will choose to drive their young children to school for safety reasons. There are no other schools situated less than a 20-minute walk away. Improve infrastructure to support sustainable development and help existing residents to reduce emissions. Chington Field is on the far outskirts of Seaford. There are no supportive services in place, i.e. no daily regular buses, no shops. Schools are, at a minimum, as I've said, 20 minutes walk away, depending on the age of the children. Medical facilities are based in the town centre at present, and there seems very limited potential to improve infrastructure, not just for existing residents, but for any new ones on a new development. Another policy aim is to work with the natural environment to help reduce emissions and risks associated with climate adaptation, alongside other benefits like improving biodiversity. Developing Chington Field is contrary to this policy. These policies cannot be followed by building on a field situated on the far edge of the town, necessitating huge amounts of construction vehicles and other associated traffic. Referring to Lewes District Council Local Climate Bond Campaign 2022, it mentions that funding could be used for, amongst other things, rewilding. So why propose putting Chington Field forward for development when we have a prime example of an already rewilded field that is providing a great habitat for wildlife? This again seems counter to your Lewes District Council's policy of placing great importance on climate change. In fact, one of the Council's key corporate objectives is to put the environment and the enhancement of biodiversity at the centre of the local plans. Turning to the National Planning Policy Framework, December 2023, one of these policies is to recognise that some undeveloped land can perform many functions, such as for wildlife, recreation, flood risk mitigation, pooling shading, carbon storage or food production. Developing Chington Field, and possibly the small holding adjacent to it, is not in keeping with environmental objectives. Not developing the field and other areas abutting the South Downs National Park supports the argument for leaving this habitat alone and taking the land out of the local planning boundary. This area is renowned for its diverse character and high-quality environment and landscape. In fact, the NPPF places importance on, and I quote, protecting and enhancing valued landscapes, sites of biodiversity or geological value and soils. It also states that development should, wherever possible, help to improve local environmental conditions. A recent amendment to the NPPF states, planning policies and decisions should play an active role in guiding development towards sustainable solutions.
I have to bring you to an end. You've had 4 minutes.
Oh,
so
sorry.
you can quickly.
Okay, so in doing so, we should take local circumstances into account. Are we certain any proposed developments won't jeopardise the unique use of ecosystems we have here? We must strive to preserve this natural beauty, as emphasised in the framework, which places significant weight on conservation of landscape and scenic beauty.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, I'm Marion, friends of Chington Field. I wish to speak about the landscape sensitivity assessment document, item 5, table 24. The information within table 24 has many omissions when compared with the Seaford Land Site Notes for Chington Field 2018. The field is alongside the entrance of the South Down National Park, with access to South Hill Park car park, the gateway to the world-famous view of the Seven Sisters. And just to remind everybody how amazing that is. Okay, so the field is also in the International Dark Sky Reserve, a recommended site in Sussex for stargazing. The success of the reserve is in protecting it from excessive artificial light at night. The South Downs National Park states any change in this area would be highly visible and impact on the character of both the immediate and the surrounding landscape. The field is within the Seaford and Eastbourne Nature Recovery Project, which is government funded and aims to mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change, creating national natural flood management schemes over time, as well as being the basis of species recovery. Chington Bay is described in the neighbourhood plan as an area of established character, which is accentuated by the proximity of open downland to the south. Wildlife is diverse, with birds of concern on the red list, such as the corn bunting, the lapwing and the grey partridge. East Sussex County Council, head of Planning and Environment, states this land is at risk of groundwater flooding, and no one would want to see this risk increased even more. The field is opposite and inside of Chington Lane Conservation Area, which states panoramic views of the Downs are evident south from the Chington Lane. Finally, there is a significant archaeological interest in the area, which has not been referred to in Table 24. The site is within an archaeological notification area, the Poynings Town and the World War I South Camp. Thank you.
I'm also talking about item 5 on the agenda. The area I'm looking at is policy IC1, which is the infrastructure provision. Proposals are that any new development creates additional demand for infrastructure services. And this is reasonable for developers, and I agree that we're reasonable for developers to address these needs in order that the development is sustainable. However, the infrastructure in Seaford is simply not coping with the existing housing, let alone any additional houses. The policy is too vague, and there needs to be some serious scrutiny as to what reasonable means. There are some specific areas of concern regarding the Chington area. If we look at policy IC2, water supply and wastewater management, the policy states, or the policy proposes, that ensure that there is a sufficient infrastructure to deal with the demand for water supply and wastewater management. At present, Southern Water cannot cope with the existing wastewater flows from the Chington Way. Splashbourne outfall discharges foul water regularly into the sea. Any additional new four-person house would add a further 600 litres a day to this capacity problem. The sea and beach in Seaford are unbelievably important gems, with thousands of regular swimmers, sailors and fishing folk, all praying that they miss the sewage. Another item is policy IC4, which is safeguarding community facilities. The policy proposes that access to community facilities is essential to social cohesion and the quality of life for the residents. It seems at the moment it's much more difficult to access GP and dentistry services in Seaford than elsewhere in the UK. The existing medical practices can't cope. For example, it takes 6 weeks just to get a blood test in Seaford, whereas you can get 1 day elsewhere in Sussex. We need to ensure the present population is catered for and not allowing services to deteriorate even further. A further policy that is set out in the document is IC11, public rights of way. This policy states that public rights of way form an important component of sustainable transport links and should be protected or enhanced, and they should not be adversely affected by development. Well, any development in Chington Way would severely affect the National Coast Path, the Vanguard Way, South Barn Bridle Way, and all the linking footpaths that link up to Bow Peak and the South Downs Way, all intertwined with the Chington area. They'll all be affected by that, and all the views and peace and birdsong and character which goes along with those footpaths. National Cycleway Path 2 from Dover all the way through to Littlehampton also goes through this part of Seaford. With many international cyclists and local tourists doing long-distance journeys along this route. The footpaths are used heavily by local clubs, including the running clubs, and there's a marathon set up around which goes up that area as well. In the same way the UK strives to protect places like Stonehenge, we should keep the Seven Sisters environment intact. If these policies are to be taken seriously, then Chingstonfield should not be considered for the proposed development, any proposed development.
Thank you. Item 5 again. I would like to read these words written by the late John Foxley, who lived next to the field and campaigned tirelessly to protect it. The town of Seaford is privileged to be located in one of the most beautiful locations in the UK, nestled between the English Channel and surrounded by the South Downs National Park. The coastline between the urban areas of Seaford and Eastbourne was defined by Natural England in the 1970s as Heritage Coast, a definition established to conserve the best stretches of undeveloped coast in England. With this privilege comes responsibility to ensure that the natural beauty, iconic locations, wildlife, biodiversity and the heritage assets are enhanced and preserved for both future and current generations. This will bring multiple benefits, including the promotion of tourism and therefore employment, growth and jobs, but also to ensure that Seaford continues to have a pleasant environment to live in, where people want to move to or remain in the town, creating a strong environment for suitable housing, employment and recreation. Development proposals in close proximity to the National Park can deleteriously impact on tranquility, for example by increases in lighting and noise as well as visual impacts. These are special qualities of the National Park which need to be considered. Development should enhance respect and reinforce the landscape through its design approach, informed by contextual analysis of the local landscape and built character. In May 2016, the South Downs National Park was designated an International Dark Sky Reserve, and Burling Gap to the east of Seaford Parish is one of the best observation sites within the National Park, as it's possible to see the Milky Way with the naked eye from there. The National Park has a strategic policy to preserve and enhance the intrinsic quality of dark night skies across the National Park. It should be borne in mind that lighting impacts on wildlife, such as moths, bats and night-flying birds, as bright lights can be very distracting.
Thank you.
My comments relate to item 5 on the agenda, in particular the theme, design, landscape and built environment. The aims and proposals of policies within the theme look sensible and seem designed to protect and enhance areas within the district. The following points are around how some of these sites identified within the evidence studies, land availability assessment and development capacity study are contradictory to the theme. My particular focus is on the inclusion of Chingstonfield as possible development and an existing bungalow in South Wales as site for intensification. Firstly, both these sites form part of the gateway to the South Wales National Park and Heritage Coast. It's where access is gained to the iconic Coast Sky cottages and views of the Seven Sisters. The sites are also joined to the South Downs International Dark Sky Reserve. These are just a couple of reasons why they are of great value to local residents, wildlife and visitors to the area, as well as tourists, tour providers, film crews, providing revenue to the local economy. One aim of the theme is to protect what is of value. As such, developments on these sites is completely out of sync. D5 states that development should use gateways, focal points and landmarks to assist people in wayfinding. Replacing green areas with housing developments would hinder wayfinding by obscuring access to the National Park. My second point is about context and neighbourhood plan. The theme aims to ensure development responds appropriately to its context. Policy D1 looks to enhance the character of the district, contributing to the local distinctiveness. Further development and intensification in the identified sites is out of context, as the area is identified as an area of established character in Seaford's neighbourhood plan, which states the area has a spacious character by virtue of tree-lined wide grass verges between the highway and the pavements, and open plan front gardens. The spacious character is accentuated by the proximity of open downland to the south. The local plan is supportive of using neighbourhood plans when it comes to local development, so again, the identification of these sites contradicts the direction of the theme. My final point is about accessibility. Policy D1 aims to provide high-quality routes that connect people and wildlife to the wider landscape by optimising green infrastructure opportunities. This is exactly what we currently have in Chingtonfield and the spacious gardens of South Way. Development here is in direct conflict with the theme, as it would destroy rather than create this connection. Additionally, the new local plan states that it should encourage the creation and accessibility, safe and healthy sustainable development. The sites mentioned are semi-rural and served by public transport. As such, they are not accessible if you have restricted mobility and don't have access to a car. The lack of transport and amenities in this part of Seaford, along with it being an area of established character, make it an unsuitable area for developing accessible housing. As a side point, the local plan has a focus on providing much needed affordable housing. A selection of semi-rural inaccessible sites in areas that have established spacious character seems unlikely to address this problem. In summary, the areas identified in the evidence studies are contradictory to the design theme and should therefore be removed from the documents.
Good evening. I refer to item 5 as well. I'd like to talk to you about water, groundwater flooding. East Sussex County Council Head of Planning and Environment stated the land south of Chington Way is at risk of groundwater flooding. The site is also upstream of an area that is at significant risk of surface water flooding, and we would not want to see this risk increase. As a very, very new resident of Chington Way, I can attest to that is flooding down Chington Way when we have recurring heavy rainfall. Environment Agency map of flood risk surface water shows a high risk, as this is the lowest point in the valley of Chington Road. Also shows a high risk of flooding across Chington Way Junction and Lullington Way. We note houses built after 2009 cannot benefit from flood insurance once flooded. Sewage. South-east water are evasive about how to tackle meeting the sewage. A Thames report reported on the 24th, water bosses are now no longer able to self-monitor themselves. South Water receives 3 times more complaints than the average. LDC water champion Emily O'Brien has been all over these complaints. Pedro assessment states New Haven East, which processes all of the Seaford's sewage, currently handles 14,027 houses and can cope with approximately another 149 houses. This is a current use per person of 150 litres a day. With the redevelopment of the houses, there would be the need to restrict water consumption per person per day to 118 litres. If this was the case, an additional 1,885 houses could be built. So either we reduce our consumption, or the new development would have to restrict their consumption by 31 litres each per day. Aquifers. South East England is classified as a water-stressed area by the Environment Agency, with drought and flooding becoming more common due to climate change. In addition, last year, from the 26th of June to the 4th of August, South East Water imposed a local hose pipe ban. The footpath south of the hill line is in poor repair, heading towards the coastline cottages from flooding. This needs assessing if waters cross the field, this will affect our aquifers. There is a detailed research of the West Basin study, but no data or report on the South Downs area. There is limited mention of the aquifer in the proposed local plan. The superficial geology study states groundwater flooding occurs when water levels in the ground rise above the ground surface. This geology has a major influence on where this type of flooding takes place. It is most likely to occur in low-lying areas underlain by permeable rocks, aquifers. The plan makes no mention of this new Seaford to Eastbourne Natural Recovery Project. This is a joint venture with Natural England and the government, inspired by studies of chalk aquifers demonstrating the importance of healthy chalk grass, healthy habitats, maximising deep soil moisture to ensure that Seaford and Eastbourne continues to receive clean, plentiful and sustainable water. This will also create wildlife-rich habitats, improve climate security and offer opportunities for the local communities. This is important for our aquifers. So therefore, research is vital and required for aquifers and beyond, as we have little knowledge of underwater geology. Especially as 310, the water cycle study states, our water supply area has a high reliance on groundwater. Around 73% of supplies come from underground aquifers. The reliance on regular replenishment of groundwater represents a challenge during extended periods of low rainfall. Contaminated land. The Environmental Health Database makes reference to potentially contaminated land with a number of infield pits.
Bring you to a close.
Okay, 2 seconds. Okay. In the surrounding area of East Environment Agency registered landfills operational between 1970 and 1974. This being approximately 225 metres to the south of Chington Field.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to also talk about item 5 and try and summarise some of the points that we've made this evening. I think we've described the potential pitfalls of any proposed development of Chington Field and the strength of the local community objection, I think, is readily apparent to all. To sort of summarise some and recap some of these points. The site borders the Seaford National Park and the local authority has a duty of care to that park. There is a detrimental impact on tourism and the income that brings to Seaford. Any development would block views to and from the National Park. The National Trust letter in 2016, which objected to the previous planning application for this site, described the severe adverse visual impact of any developments. The National Park also describes its own theoretical visibility assessment. As we've described, it's an area of dark skies. It's one of the few places you can see the Milky Way in the UK with the naked eye. Certainly in England. The land is at risk of groundwater flooding, as my wife has described, and I again can also attest to that in recent heavy rainfall. The Highways Agency stated in August 2016 that no highway conditional legal agreement can be secured to ensure that adequate access can actually be provided to this site. East Sussex Fire and Rescue Service stated that due to the site location, they would recommend that any new properties are fitted with domestic sprinklers. This is a very unusual thing in all my years of construction. I've never seen it. Infrastructure and services has been described are very stretched. The wastewater provision for Seaford is at capacity, and New Haven East water treatment plant is either going to have to be rebuilt, extended, or a completely new plant built. Medical services, something I personally am suffering from at the moment, are stretched. You can't get all the doctors waiting. This is a new resident. They're close to new patients. Dentists are rare if unobtainable. Environmental health and identifying potential contaminated land. To the south of the site, the land is defined as agricultural and therefore subject to rural policies. There's a potential detrimental impact on wildlife and especially bird species, as has been described. The land surrounding Chington Field in the National Park is traditional downland farming. and is not drenched in pesticides, herbicides, denuded wildlife and rate-intensive factory farming, and is not an agri-desert, as described in the landowner's book. The land forms an essential transition between the residential limits of the eastern side of Seaford town and the tranquility of the South Downs National Park. It is our duty, I believe, to conserve and enhance the natural beauty, wildlife, cultural heritage of the National Park, and to promote opportunities for the understanding and enjoyment of the special qualities of the area to the public. It is not a planning game for loopholes to be exploited, again as described in the said book.
Bring it to a close.
I'm just going to. But please help us, we ask your help, as friends of Chington Field, to maintain this unique environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else? So we're coming up into an hour now, and I want to close the public participation at 8, if possible. Just to get planning afterwards.
Yeah, sorry, I was asked.
Thank you. So, Mr. Going, District Councillor for Seaford East. Firstly, I just wanted to say how incredible it is that everyone's put so much work into responding to this consultation, and there is an enormous amount of evidence that has been brought forward today, which is exactly what the consultation is designed to find. So thank you to everyone. I would also like to just pick up something that Jeff said at the beginning, which is in his report, and just make a small but I think very important correction to it. I believe Jeff said that the site that's been the focus of this discussion, the Chington Field, was being put forward as and being described as developable or deliverable. That's actually not correct. It's designated as potentially deliverable. And that makes a very important difference, because that means that this stage of consultation is explicitly looking for evidence to make that determination about whether it is in fact a site that can be delivered and developed. And so these considerations, this evidence that is being put forward today is exactly what is being sought in order to determine whether that should go forward to the next stage of the local plan development process. That means that this is not being proposed at this stage. It is a site that has been proposed as available, and it's yet to be determined what the evidence is on whether it should go forward. And that should take into account all of the evidence that has been commissioned by the District Council, all of the evidence that you submit as a Town Council, all the evidence that you submit as individuals, and also then has to cohere with all the policies that end up in the final draft local plan. Secondly, I just wanted to pick up another point on the report for this item, where it's mentioned that the development capacity study is very broad brush, and the illustration is given of this, where two sites on Chington Lane and South Lane, if memory serves, are described with identical wording. I believe that that's not actually a sign of a broad brush approach, but rather an error. And this is a matter that I've taken up with the head of planning policy, the District Council, and he has assured me that this is going to be investigated by his team, and if necessary, correction will be issued as an addendum to that study. I will be prepared to speak at business and thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I did anticipate that there may be a few queries or questions to deal with before debate is put to the members of the committee. There's just one point, I think, arising that I'd like to briefly deal with, and that's the connection between the neighbourhood plan and the local plan. The current local plan part 2 and the neighbourhood plan were adopted on the same day in February 2020. So it's been quite convenient. The neighbourhood plan runs parallel to the local plan, and that's the way it should be, because the neighbourhood plan is required to be compliant with the local plan. The council is taking steps to inquire about the review of the neighbourhood plan, and this is something I will be taking up with the officer concerned, who should be, will probably be attending the drop-in. There is a policy officer in the team at Lewis District Council with special responsibility for liaising with parishes and towns over the neighbourhood plan. And it's envisaged that the neighbourhood plan will be reviewed in line with the local plan, because it has got to be compliant with the local plan to be approved by an inspector. So at the very least, whatever allocations come forward in the local plan will have to be repeated in the neighbourhood plan, as they are now. For example, other policies where the neighbourhood plan has expanded on points in the current local plan will be able to be retained. And a good example of this is areas of established character, which impinges on this land at Chewton Way. In the local plan, areas of established character across the whole district are simply listed in policy DM34. The sites in Seaford are listed along with ones in Whittlesfield and other villages around the district. They're dealt with in about half a page of the local plan, but a lot of the residents will know that they're dealt with in about 4 or 5 pages of the neighbourhood plan. There's a big expansion on the descriptions of each area, and there are plans of each area. And there's also specific design guidelines which have been of great use to the Planning and Highways Committee in dealing with the most common application that comes before them, which is for house extensions, because there are specific guidelines there which the committee have been keen to bring to the attention of Lewis District Council, and Lewis District Council are beginning to cooperate fully with the Seaford Town Council's comments regarding how house extensions should be designed and built to retain the character of the areas of the town which the speaker spoke about. So it's envisaged that there will have to be a review of the neighbourhood plan in parallel to the local plan, because one has got to be compliant with the other. You can't have a practitioner who wants, say, to redevelop a site of one large house with, say, a terrace of 3 houses. You can't have him come to the local planning authorities and find that the local plan has one policy and the neighbourhood plan has a contrary policy. They've got to comply to make sure the planning process runs smoothly. And similarly, the local plan has to comply with national planning policy framework. It makes for a smooth running and it makes for certainty in the planning process. So there will have to be a review of the neighbourhood plan. We don't know yet what allocations there will be in there, because one of the main purposes will be to replace the allocations. Some of the allocations in the current neighbourhood plan have been used up and some haven't. But there obviously need to be a review of that. And other policies in the neighbourhood plan may be introduced or expanded in line with what comes out of the local plan. But there will still be safeguards in the neighbourhood plan. It will be given a new lease of life, and I'm sure it will still be there with the design guidelines especially and the other special designations, to carry on protecting the special character of areas of Seaford and Seaford generally. So, but as I say, until we see what the draft plan has in store for Seaford, it's difficult to say how the new plan should be reviewed.
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to Friends of Chiltern Field for the extraordinary work that you've done. I have to say that I'm one of the 400 recipients. I'm one of the 400 recipients of that letter, and I have been in complete awe of your work because I have tried to copy some of it by doing my own homework, and I have failed, I think. So in comparison to you, I take my hat off to you for the work and the commitment, because it shows that it's not just the wildlife and the views of Seaford, it's the people of Seaford that make this place special. And I think our solidarity and our determination to defend our coastline and our wildlife and our beautiful town is actually why we're here and what we're doing. I'd also like to thank our planning officer, because every time I read the documents and thought, yeah, that's what I want to say, I find that he's already said it. So all I can say is I recommend his reply dated the 31st of August 2021, which is 2.5 years ago, which basically says, Seaford is lovely, it's full, please try again later. We are surrounded by the national park and the sea, we're full. And apart from a few brownfield sites, nothing else should be put here, and we should look after what we've got and we should preserve it. So I'm absolutely behind you guys, and I think you're doing a wonderful job, and we'll do everything we possibly can to help you and defend what we've got.
I have to just compliment my colleague, Councillor Withers, for her opening address. I totally agree with her. I think this is also a matter of community, and it's quite clear to me that we have community in Seaford. Quite remarkable, intelligent, well-researched people who are prepared to give their time and investment to something that they clearly recognise and appreciate. I think all the points I've written down 5 pages, just in case you need some other. I think I'm quite good at writing down all these points. You have made 12 points, 11 points, and then a summary. And you've picked up and linked policy, contradiction, aspiration, and in a way, it's quite clear, if it wasn't before, which it was, that this is such a controversial area that it would be very, very difficult to find any possible reason why this should go forward. I hope that you do take up the opportunity to get to the Down Centre. I'm really pleased that that was rearranged. I am concerned, and was concerned, because I heard about, though I didn't go to the New Haven, inaccessible consultation area. I'm really pleased this is more accessible. I hope you're able to share that with your colleagues and they're able to be heard. Because I think one of the most important things to me this evening is that we've created an opportunity in a larger space to listen to our residents. This is what we are here for, and I hope we're able to continue to do that. But thank you for all your work, again, echoing what's already been said.
Thank you. I think what I'm going to suggest that we go through the questionnaire and see what your responses are. Just you see it before you. You've got a new motion. We've got a new motion in front of us, which is to agree that formal response to consultation.
Could you use the microphone? We can't hear very well. Thank you.
We have a new motion to agree that the formal response to the consultation be agreed electronically with those councillors in attendance at this meeting, based on comments discussed and agreed in the meeting. So if I go question by question on, and just put your hands up if you want to add anything to what's already been on paper. So starting on page 20 of your agenda. So vision and aims. Question: what are your views on the proposed vision and aims, and do you want to add anything to what's already there?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just the first item on this thing, which is mitigating and adapting to climate change. There's an item here that talks about ensure that new development is as energy efficient and low carbon as possible. It would be handy if there was some way that any planning things that go through us and this would be subject to better than building regulations and so on. And where it talks about another area of this, there's actually an item that says the plan would actually include recommendations or requirement for solar panels. They also suggested that included batteries as well.
Any more comments on question 1? So move on to next question. Is there an alternative vision or aims for parcel that we should be considering? What are your views on the proposed vision and aims? Anything to add to the comments there?
Can I just say that the difficulty with the calculations on numbers is it doesn't look at the constraints of the area. And we are constrained by the beach and the national park. So we can't expand doesn't seem to be anywhere that actually admits that we are geographically completely surrounded. And I haven't found any of the documents I've read that describes that we can only look at what we have in as greenfield or brownfield sites, because there is no hope to expand things because of these constrictions. We can't make a promenade and go out into the sea, and therefore we are very limited in what we look at. And I think the only positive thing I can think of is that if some of these brownfield sites that are in Central Seaford could be used more productively, I would very much positively support that. I know they're more expensive and therefore they are less attractive to developers, but that's what I would like to do, is a much more efficient use of what we've got in the town.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for everyone else speaking earlier. Obviously, one of the questions at the moment, it's obviously, it tries to set the context for the rest of the district in the sense of, going up to the West Sussex boundary, Haverstead, Burgess, and so on. I mean, in a lot of ways, us here on Seaford, the context, we need the context, but it's very difficult to us to agree or disagree or put arguments for and against, because we don't really have the full detail there, but it is listed there. We have to obviously take it point blank, so to speak, on what's in that spatial report. And it obviously does list the sort of the housing further down in potential housing in Seaford itself, and some of those obviously just historical in a lot of ways, but from previous administrations on the district council. Don't forget, sometimes people do often forget. Although I think it is unique in our sense here, we have the sea, we have the national, we have the South Downs bordering us. Because the town of Lewis, of course, are all enclosed in the national park, and they still find houses to build as well. But that's another argument. I'm sure that we could. That's really off piece on this particular discussion. But basically, for number 2, the commentary is more or less acceptable for what's there. A couple of typos here and there, but apart from that, it's sort of fine. Thank you.
Just to add a comment to that, I think in the comments on the spatial strategy question, at paragraph 2, where there were 6 options of different areas where additional housing could be accommodated. The new town, or the new settlement option has been dropped, so there's the 5. I think, as I said in the report, you would expect Lewis, in the circumstances, to look to spread housing delivery over those remaining 5 options. This is the most practical thing to do. But from what Councillor Wimhoff was saying, we can obviously put in there the obvious geographical and other restraints, infrastructure, etc., that Seaford has to bear. We'd be tempted to say that all development should be allocated to Wivelsfield and Burgess Hill or something like that, but we know we can't do that. We know that the outcome would be to spread the development over the small and larger villages, the area close to Mid-Sussex District Council's boundary, and the coastal towns. But we can still, in the answer to that question, bring out all the constraints that Seaford has, and if we like to, as well as I do there, use the Chewton Way development as an example of how those constraints work. It's all, I think, included in that section. I'm just going to it now. So if members agree with all the points made in that answer to the question under number 2, spatial strategy, then that can go into the response. With any additional points to emphasise certain issues which members want to bring up. If they're happy with that sort of, with a response based on that part of the report in pages 21, 22, 23, then obviously that will be what we do as a response if the members decide. But anyway, members will have a chance. I mean, I will prepare a response on members' behalf and circulate it, so members will have a chance to strengthen certain points, discard certain points if they wish. Okay.
Thank you. Any Councillor Coe?
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to draw attention to page 2, call sites. We've got around at Chington Way, Lee Street car park, etc. Why hasn't Town Parade been included, and also the Southern Gas Network side at Blashington Road?
We can ask Lewis why those sites haven't been included. I don't know. I think Town Parade was given permission back in 2011, so that's just it can't be. We don't know what the intentions are for that, but we can ask Lewis why they haven't been included. Yes.
Well, the Blashington Road site would be ideal for social housing.
Anything more on the spectral strategy? Councillor Hartwell.
Thank you. I guess I just have to we have to keep reminding ourselves of the aims that are on page 25 and neatly headed on page 20 about the concerns that the plan is underpinned by responses to climate change, homes for all, which I think is a key issue, a thriving economy, etc., etc. When we're starting to identify sites and we're thinking about building, we've just heard from you all about the need to be very aware of the types of housing, for example, that could be envisaged if Chington Fields were to go anywhere at all. They would not be homes for all. They would be an incredibly expensive end for people to come and live in Seaford. This doesn't follow what we in Seaford require and need at the moment. We need to remind ourselves and link our local plan with our local health strategy. The Joint Strategic Needs Assessment needs to be brought into consideration when we're actually thinking about what we require in terms of housing and development. And it's very easy to talk about climate change and economy and green space. There's a little bit about community health and well-being, but we need to get heads around that too, because if we want to make Seaford a thriving place, it needs to be available and inclusive to all members of society. And at the moment, quite a few planning applications in the past have gone through that haven't actually been identifying the most vulnerable in our society. So it's just a comment really. Thank you.
Is there any more to add to question 2? Is everybody happy? What's written down? Yes. We go on to question climate change on page 24. That's all right. any further response to what's before you on this question? Councillor Buchanan.
The top of page 25. The top of page 25. So should the new local plan require minimisation of and compensation for loss of carbon sequestration? And if so, how should off-site compensation be addressed? That's actually quite a tough question. The reality is, the real way of offsetting carbon is by growing more trees, improving or reclaiming peaks and swamps. The danger here is that you end up with a lot of greenwashing going on, where people sign up and say, we've got lots of trees, under some particular management, those trees that you don't deliver the amounts of carbon sequestration that is actually needed to cover. So, I'm not quite sure how to answer that. We've got to be very clear that we're not greenwashing these issues whenever something like this arises.
Can I just add about insulation? Because we're always talking about solar cells and heating, but I think that actually improving building regulations so that better heat and sound insulation is part of the quality of life for residents, particularly in flats and small houses. And I think that kind of thing would help very much in terms of reducing people's utility bills and therefore helping with the economy and helping with people's cost of living. So I would like to see improved quality of build. Whether we can actually have an influence on local building regulations, I think is a doubt. But that's what I would like to see: well-made, well-insulated houses, as well as having solar panels, etc.
Thank you. Anything else? No, so we go on to 4, natural environment theme. Anything more to add? All good on that one? So 5 homes for everyone theme. I think Councillor Martin has already addressed that one. Anything more to add on that one? Councillor Hanneman?
Thank you, Chair. The Dave Valley project has been mentioned a couple of times tonight. And also it did get quite a job, didn't it, by the district council. I don't know if we can actually reinstate that for low housing, small lower properties and a little bit of local industry there. I'm not sure there's scope to reintroduce it at our level, if it seemed appropriate, because I know obviously on the back of the Labour plan a lot of work was done on that particular project, and Councillor Clay-Nixon mentioned that down there as well, didn't he, just now, where the gasworks were and everything. All that area is part of Dane Valley, isn't it? So I don't know if there's any scope for reintroducing the Dane Valley back into this agenda, see where we are. Because I think it could be quite useful to re-meet it as part of this particular plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Add to this one? So we now go on to economy and regeneration theme, page 27. Councillor Bond.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As I was going through this and making my comments over the last few months, suddenly Jeff's report this evening's made so many of my comments anyway. So, but on this one particularly, with the hotel accommodation and the Airbnb, I know Seaford Chamber of Commerce and the other Chamber of Commerces across the district actually been trying to get more hotel accommodation. It is needed because there is less and less in a lot of towns and villages in the district. And we have seen an increase in Airbnbs, and I do agree that the District Council needs to look at how many there are in the area, because we are losing our homes for families in the area. So it does need to be looked at, because I think they've been surprised how many Airbnbs are in the district, which means there is a huge loss of housing for families. So definitely needs to be watched.
Thank you. Any more comments? No? Councillor.
Hi, yes, obviously the Daimler project does fit into this section as well, number 6, as well as the previous. Thank you.
To infrastructure and community facilities. Anything to add? Councillor Martha.
So I guess we just can't labour enough that we cannot have our concerns about infrastructure being ignored again. Too often has this been ignored, too often have we been left with so many different, if we just list the policies, as you so kindly reminded us, that we're just not meeting and not making fit for purpose our current service provision. It's quite clear. We're completely top-loaded. We cannot possibly take on anything else until again we look and align our policies with our plans and with our development and with our needs assessments to see what's really required. Our population needs in Seaford has changed. The population tree, if you look at it, the dynamic has totally changed in the last 20 to 30 years. So where you thought you had a nice quiet coastal town with a fairly elderly population, you now don't. You have quite a bulge of young people and families, and with that brings so much more need than we've been seeing in the past through education and health and play and all these issues that have been particularly listed here, but we're not managing to invest in those to make the area fit for purpose for its, as people have mentioned already, for its current population, let alone starting to increase it. So we will certainly, I know my council colleagues are totally on this and want to make sure that we do get better investment in these services and our infrastructure, but we must remind ourselves that this is absolutely headline for all our planning organisations and discussions really. So please again do bring it up in going along to ask your questions. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I just think one thing we may need to mention, because obviously this is Lewis's local plan, and we've heard from residents that it takes them 6 weeks to get a blood test, but in other towns locally, it only takes them a day to get it. So Lewis will look at the local plan and think there's not a major issue because they don't live in Seaford. We need to maybe say that we need to look at Seaford when it comes to council infrastructure a little bit differently, and they should be assessing each town, village individually on things like that, rather than, especially when they say we need to build X amount of houses in our town, but actually they look at individual infrastructure for towns and villages rather than overall district-wide policy.
Can we include the A259 is the only road along the south coast, and it is struggling, and especially through, it's getting noticeable through the town now that it queues of traffic at certain times. Thank you. Councillor Honeyman.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. IC10, the former Lewis Dartford railway line, it's 55 years now since that closed. And I can actually remember when the railway used to go over the cliff last week in Lewis and going up the railway and then on to Dartford. Quite sad, and all those days are gone. But the version which Lewis Dartford, there's implications because it would make Seaford Station more of a hub, more of a terminal if it ever did go about. It would be the more simple version. Not the one which is tunnelling around, was it a ridge and further up Croydon and then the other side of the west of the Lewis. So the more simple version would be the best starting point for that. I was trying to understand in the district spatial survey which one they're going at. I think they're a little bit nonplussed, I couldn't quite work it out. But the simpler version would be the one that's one I'd be more supporting at this stage. Otherwise, everyone we're going to go ahead, basically. Okay, thank you.
Comments? No. Councillor
just two extra things to emphasise really on the community facilities and infrastructure. One, the fact that we don't have civic accommodation, that we are using an ecclesiastical church hall here. For a public meeting of reasonable size, so that we've had to move this because our council accommodation is not big enough. And that is in the strategic objectives of the town council itself. So much of what we're talking about has already been discussed as our objectives as a council, but we recognise that we are quite short of such things. And lastly, about green spaces. They are under great pressure as well, and we cannot afford to lose them within the boundaries themselves.
Thank you. Right, unless there's no comments on that, I will go on to design, landscape and built environment scheme. So, number 8 on page 29. To add.
Just a point arising from what I mentioned earlier, I don't think there'd be any proposals to drop from the Lewis local plan the areas of special character, but I think we should maybe put in there a word in support of the areas of special character, just to ensure that their protection, in case Lewis were just sort of thinking of paring down some of their policies and leaving that out. So perhaps that should be mentioned specifically in the where I've referred on page 30 to the design guidelines being a significant influence in retaining the quality and character. There perhaps it should also be a mention of the need to retain and maybe expand some of the designated areas of established characters.
Thank you. water theme, page 30. Anything more to add? Councillor Khan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This whole issue about flood risk and the water authorities that look after the drainage and sewage supplies. One of the reasons the Dane Valley redevelopment is struggling is because that part of the dam floods with sewage. And nobody seems to be able to do anything about it. The water authorities aren't particularly interested in it. I don't know how to overcome that to be here, but it's something that if we can get into the words into the plan that requires these guys to do something. We have a piece of land that can be developed, but it can't be while it's potentially sewage discharging.
Anybody else? No, I think that concludes the questionnaire. So we go back to recommendation to agree that the formal response to the consultation be agreed electronically with those councillors in attendance at the meeting based upon comments discussed and agreed in the meeting. Furthermore, to note that the Town Council's response will be posted on the Town Council's website. So then I have a proposer and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Martha. Seconded by Councillor Coleman. And can I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. So thank you everybody for coming. And thank you for your comments and your time you've given up this evening. Thank you. Councillors, we're going to have a 5-minute break. We'll now go back to agenda item 4, and this is planning applications received Monday the 8th of January. LW/24/0002, 27 Bishopstone Road, Bishopstone, single-storey rear extension. Any members of the public like to comment on this application? Open to the committee. Okay. Councillor Coleman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's very small. It's a very small single-storey rear extension, and I'm quite happy to support this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Martha. And can I have a show of hands, please? I'm going to jump a few applications because I know some people are here for LW/24/0017 Catholic Church, and thank you for your patience. So it's Catholic Church of St Thomas More, Sutton Road, installation of 2 emergency sleeping pods for temporary use by rough sleepers. Any members of the public like to come? Yes, sir.
Maximise on 4 minutes. So. Right, hi. Bob Goff, out of the ashes or the phoenix rises alongside crowd concerns, and that's pod concerns. There's been no formal consultation by the church with nearby residents. There has never been an issue of rough sleepers in Seaford in the last 45 years. I have policed this area as a police constable, a sergeant and a chief inspector. Problems at Brighton problems in Eastbourne. Problems in Brighton occurred, started off in the 80s when the Labour Council implemented a homeless policy and opened up a huge great space. They got the whole of the nation's homeless down there and has created a problem ever since. The pods, if agreed, in my view, will be a magnet, in my experience, expert view, will be a magnet for rough sleepers. Chaotic drug users, alcoholics, people who do not want to be housed. One needs to differentiate clearly between the homeless and rough sleepers. They are a different category of people. Most homeless people statutorily are rehoused by the local district council. And they are mainly single mothers with children. Pods not relevant. In terms of the previous history, the applicant, the deacon, calls himself, or has called himself, a business consultant. At the moment, this deacon is director of 2 companies, according to Companies House, and has been involved in a multi-million pound business, trusts and charities in Brighton, home and elsewhere. If these pods are allowed, and if things move on, the Roman Catholic Church, according to concerns from residents, will become a 24-hour drop-in hostel for rough sleepers. This has happened. If you do some due diligence on this, you will see the history of the Sharp family. Concerns residents are really, it's not just the pods, it's the implications of a business venture starting there and becoming a haven for chaotic rough sleepers in Seaford. I have to say, in a residential area, pods in front of the building line is not a good look. If Seaford Town Council did want this in Seaford, you could think laterally. You've got the old town hall, that would be available for rough sleepers, or you could even put pods in the car park of the council offices, both in the town centre, not in a residential area. I implore you to reconsider this. We put our representations to the bishop, and they are looking at it again, because we understand at the moment no permission from the diocese has been given in relation to the location of those pods. So I implore you to turn this application down, or recommend this turned down. It would be a dreadful event for the future of this town in a residential area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, that's right. So, I'll start off by saying that, as we all know here, Seaford is known for being a welcoming and unassuming, gentle town. So it's little wonder that when I've spoken to people round and about the area in Seaford South where the pods are to be located, people's first reaction is, fantastic, what a wonderful thing to do. Our town is good to caring people. Sadly though, it's affected by the same pressures as anywhere else, and it's unusual to walk through the centre of town these days without seeing at least 1 or 2 people sitting on the pavements. Having had conversations myself with local police and a church leader in the centre of town, I can tell you that most of the people who beg, who we may see during the day, are accommodated overnight. Over the last few years, the number of true rough sleepers can almost certainly be counted on one hand. Whilst one person sleeping out without safety or shelter is one too many in my book, we want to be realistic about need. I've had the privilege today of speaking to a lady who's a social prescriber at Seaford Medical Centre who previously has worked for decades with rough sleepers, hidden homeless, sex workers, so on and so forth. and generally all around homelessness. And she's happy for me to paraphrase what she said to me earlier today. Her name's Monica O'Kill. The point she made to me was that if provision for rough sleepers springs up, it's likely to invite more street homeless to Seaford. That's in her long experience. Being street homeless is a very unfortunate situation to be in. People have usually been through a progression of accommodation circumstances to end up sleeping rough. Most present with undiagnosed mental health conditions or are almost always uncontrolled or untreated and comorbid with other physical conditions, together with possible bereavements, relationship breakups, and frequently present with at least one type of substance misuse issue. They are very vulnerable members of our society. The chaotic lifestyle and associations often bring antisocial behaviour, drugs and violence with it, sadly to say. Nowhere in the outline for this scheme, albeit just 2 seemingly small emergency pods at this stage, with an aspiration for more permanent facilities, as you may have noticed in the application, nowhere is an operational procedure provided. There are pods in many other places in the UK. Some have lasted, some haven't, and ones which have done well seem to have been installed with massive support from across the community, multi-agencies, police, healthcare, so on and so forth. The pods that are proposed here in Seaford are very close to a busy main road. I would worry about the safety of the inhabitants. A few years ago I was walking along the main road to the pavement there, and I came across a young woman who was convulsing on the floor. I had to call 999, and it turned out that she'd had an overdose. It was a very scary situation to deal with. As a member of the public, who I'm not a healthcare professional, but has always had various first aids of the nth degree, it was still a really scary thing to deal with. So I wonder, with the proposal that it's volunteers from the church to look after people with no keying into local facilities and services, how that would work. What happens if there's a stabbing in or around the pod? What happens if someone overdoses? What happens? All these things, we don't know, it's not in the documentation. They may seem like sensational examples that I'm giving you, but they're real world occurrences. An increasing need with these pernicious factors to create community tensions rather than cohesion. And community cohesion is what we really need to deal with rough sleeping if there is a problem. Yeah. Okay, 2 quick points. The internal floor area of less of the pod is only 2/3 of the minimum allowed sleeping floor area in the UK. And the main thing I want to say is if we do identify a need in the community, then it needs to be addressed as a community across the community. And this planning application was news to everyone in the community.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment on this application? So open to the committee. I think Councillor Marhall was first.
Thank you very much for your comments on this particular issue. I think it is of a major concern to us. I pick up on the information about numbers, but I mostly pick up on the lack of coordination across a clearly complex, multi-agency issue. I'm a nurse by background, still registered. I'm also a public health expert, and I have been involved in day centres and night shelters in other larger cities where we did have a lot of rough sleeper issues. To coordinate such support is incredibly time and resource intensive. And even though I'm the most generous natured people, it's very difficult to just isolate some people and expect volunteers to support in incredibly complex and make them very vulnerable, very difficult situations. So I think even if we are unable to make a decision this evening, we could certainly propose to have a lot more information about this particular application, which quite clearly hasn't been addressed. And I certainly am listening to to the comments from local residents. And I think the fact that it's such a sensitive issue and residents actually aren't here, given the last group of residents that were here, it's quite clear that this information hasn't gone very far and wide in Seaford, because I think there would be considerable anxieties about what we're trying to create here. I'm not opposed to supporting vulnerable residents at all, but I'm certainly opposed to doing it on the hoof, on the back of an envelope, without any consideration for the multi-agency investment that would be required, and also the vulnerabilities of local residents.
Thank you. Councillor Hanneman.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I actually agree with Golf, which is quite interesting. I don't normally always, but also they often have a little bit of difference there, but I actually agree with this occasion. The context is slightly right, and Councillor Bristow as well. Interestingly, I don't think there's enough evidence looking at all the documents that go with this particular application. I mean, if the demand was there, and it was coordinated with the other ministries in Seaford as well, and the pods were basically, the ones in Brighton, they used to have pods, but they used to put them inside the church, they put them outside. So there's some on the borders of Brighton and Hove, I think wherever there's a church on there, where those pods will be inside, and so you have a certain amount of protection anyway. But we're not talking about right now, we're talking back to here. I'd like to see a bit more evidence. So in a way, if it was needed, then I think we would have a much more different discussion. And obviously, Councillor Martindale's a bit involved with this side of things as well. And I like the idea of what Bob Goff actually did, the difference between the Rustlings and the homeless. So there is a big difference. And we know we have temporary homeless institutions in Seaford. That's a very different ball of game and how that works. So with that, at this stage, I probably couldn't really support it. Although if it was needed, I'd support the fence, but if it was needed, but it's not. There we go.
Thank you, Councillor Hanneman. Anybody else want to comment?
I picked up from what Councillor Hanneman has said, that I'm assuming they were proposing and seconding the motion. The main concern is the lack of coordinated support likely to be available for the occupants of the pods, and there's no indication in the supporting material that sufficient support will be available. Do you want to tie this to sort of lead on to say that, given the doubts about the level of support, there's concern that the pods will bring problems to the area which will be detrimental to residential community? Do you want to tie it to that? Because that, in a way, is a clearer planning reason. If that is your concern, it's not just the lack of support; it's the fact that what that might lead to. Is that something that, if you were to propose a second, you would want to adopt?
Can I just quickly come back? Yes, I mean, as it stands, Chair, it's not, there's not enough there, not enough evidence. So that's not to say that future occasion we may be back 10 years' time whatever, and we won't be looking at an application very different. But this is not 10 years' time or 5 years' time, this is now. So I agree with what you said, Chris.
Thank you. Yes, I'd also just, Chair, like to. I'm wondering if there are just two issues as well, though, because it's planning for pods, as well as pods for vulnerable people who are rough sleeping. But we have a planning issue as well about putting pods, placing pods in the residential area, and how we feel about that as well. So I guess there is still planning commentary that is required. They're being put there for campers, for example, or for an Airbnb or some such, we'd still have something to say about pods being there. So I think we need to think through the pods. But the main objection, which I do agree with that you're saying, is that this is a massive issue in terms of coordination and support, and it can't just come. It would never come from just one organisation. Not in this day and age. I mean, in 50 years ago, when it didn't happen or people were rough sleeping a lot, churches did actually open up their doors. And then out of that often grew local organisations, i.e. day centres, night shelters, etc. But the issue is churches not having to open their doors because the issue isn't here. There are, and we don't need to attract it. And we also have a very strong ecumenical organisation group in Seaford. And even though they're worried about vulnerable people, and they're worried about people who are homeless, this isn't the answer. That's not the answer that they're coming up with at the moment.
I'm just trying to think how to align myself with this, I have to say. But if for example, we voted against this, we would still go to Lewis name right approval. So whatever happens, we would have to have a whole series of advisors set against what we think needs to go. Even if we vote against it tonight, would it just be rejected, or would it be rejected on the basis of all the issues that we've been talking about in terms of inter-organisational inroads and labour on background and stuff like that?
So, I think that whatever we decide tonight, I think from what Mr. Goff has said, is likely to go to Planning Applications Committee at Lewis before the committee rather than be delegated. I mean, you've got an open field as to what you say, either in support or objection. But I think one thing that will happen to the application is that there seems to be a growing groundswell of objection. Mr. Goff has mentioned that there's, I think you said 25 residents ready to take up the cause or object before the deadline for objections or representations on February the 19th. So it is likely to go to the Planning Applications Committee, whatever this committee decides tonight. Because it's going to grow into quite a controversial issue. That's the feeling we get. But as I say, whatever, we should try and base our views on it on planning, mainly on planning grounds. It's difficult in this case to differentiate between the planning grounds and grounds which might not carry too much weight in planning. Because it's an unusual situation. That's why I said that if there is concern about lack of support, then you need really to tie it to a planning ground arising from that lack of support, and that is that it is likely to bring antisocial behaviour into a residential area or something like that. Also, I mean, it's open to you to object to the appearance of the pods. They're not they're the sort of things that have an impact in a residential area. There's a screen fence, but I don't know exactly how visible they will be. That's another ground. But I think you need, if there is concern, the concern about the lack of support is valid, but it needs to be bolstered, if you like, by reference to a planning ground arising from that. say, it's likely to go to Lewis Planning Applications Committee anyway, so the final decision will be there.
Thank you. Councillor Whitman.
Well, on that basis, can I suggest that the size of the pods, and in terms of dignity, sanitation, I think they're capable toilets, I think the actual practicalities are fairly basic, having looked at the plans. So that it feels a bit NIMBY-ish to actually talk about this, but if those are the grounds for planning, and the sheer size and the quality of sanitation, plumbing, chemical toilets, etc., I think would be one that we should flag up.
Put it unlabelling, can't we?
Yes, I think
the
the floor area is 7%.
Councillor Cunningham.
You want to have support from all the various agencies. Lack of support, yeah, all that's going to include a lead basis, not so much plan weight, but it's going to be there anyway. That's something in that case, yeah, sort of.
So we're going to object on this application with what's to read out the reasons.
Well, if there's a proposal to object, it'll be based on, firstly, there's a concern about the lack of consultation with residents. Secondly, a concern that the lack of coordinated support likely to be available for the occupants of the pods. There's no indication in the supporting paperwork or evidence that sufficient support would be available. And given this, there must be doubts about concerns about the problems which the occupants will bring to the area, which are likely to, such as antisocial behaviour, which will be generally detrimental and unneighbourly, and also concern about the lack of facilities in the pods themselves, in particular the restricted floor area and the sanitation facilities.
I'm not sure how relevant this is to this regard to what you might say. But if somebody had come to us with a building which they wanted to fill up with people that they wanted to have people stay who had these needs at some level, then might you just change the use, or I don't know. But because it's pods, it's not changing use, I'm just putting the pods there. So I'm just kind of saying that it kind of undermines the planning process if you ended up with an HMO or something in a building that was supporting, rough sleepers. They'd have to request a change of use of that building, but because they're not changing use of the building, they're actually replacing pods. They're not having to do that. So it kind of, I don't know, it just feels as though by placing pods, you're kind of skirting the issue, because at that point again you'd be asking for where's the support and how is that going to be, how is that type of service, if you like, going to be supported on a professional basis, because it's about safeguarding, so you can't, so that's, sorry, I mean I just feel that
we've got
I think that's covered, isn't it?
that's probably covered, yeah. I just wanted to think.
yeah, so who would like to propose and who would like to second? Yes. And Councillor Hunterman, seconded. Jeffers is read out. Thank you. If this goes to committee at Lewis District Council, they are minded to support it, can we put a restriction on, like a trial period?
It's acknowledged to be a temporary use. A temporary use has always had to be restricted by a condition. But here on the other side, you've got the fact that it can't really be restricted to say 6 months or a year because of the level of investment involved in buying the poles and putting them there. So the 3 years that's suggested really is the right balance between one side and the other. So I don't really think there's any other provisos you can put in. It's, you know, unless you think it should be less than 3 years, but as I say, that sort of condition becomes unreasonable when you take into account the level of investment.
Thank you. Okay, unless there's any other comments, we've got a proposal and a seconder. Can I have a show of hands, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Objections carried unanimously. Councillor Borman didn't speak in the vote.
Thank you. Everybody's welcome to stay. We've got quite a few more to go through. Thank you all for coming. We move on to LW's 23/0768, 2 Little Close, Bishopstone, single-storey side extension, relocation of rear access steps and alterations to the existing side and rear fenestration. Who would like to lead? Who would like to lead on this one? Councillor Martha?
I mean, I don't think this is particularly a problem. I mean, I'm just thinking about just the side and making sure that it's within the borders of fenestration is fine. And I think it seems to be perfectly okay to relocate the output steps at the back. It seems to be a reasonable ask, request.
Are you proposing to support?
Yeah.
Any other comments?
About it.
Can I find a seconder, please? Councillor Bowler. Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. LW/24/0001, 5 Chington Lane, replacement single-storey side extension, 2-storey side extension, installation of solar panels to a rear roof slope, alterations to fenestration and associated landscaping. Would you like to lead on this one? Councillor Foreman?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The single-storey side extension, absolutely support. But the 2-storey side extension, I'm objecting to. It's not subservient at all, it's not set back. The ridge height is exactly the same. And our making plan designed by one state that 2-storey extensions need to be subservient. So I'm proposing an objection.
Councillor Honeyman.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Borman. It's very modern. I don't know if it's too modern or not, is it, in that area, but it's the 2-storey mansion. I'm happy to support the single-storey mansion. I think part 3 that
All I add is that yes, it makes a substantial detached dwelling look like a pair of semi-detached dwellings. And unless you have that set down and set back, that's how it will look, because it's just too broad. So that's why these design guidelines introduce this idea of setting that, because ultimately it's going to retain the character of the area, because houses like that, where there's been a setback, they do look far more attractive than this sort of one. But I don't think it's really broad to say it's just one lump. And it looks like a pair of sentences and so on. Just that little bit of setting down from the roof and setting back will improve the appearance of the dwelling and retain the character of the streets.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I would not have said that as eloquently.
object at this moment in time, but a resubmission of a new plan is...
Well, we've been supported in some of the cases. There's a case in the update report where we're now being supported in these cases. We'll make sure that we only apply the restrictions where they're needed. But the officers at the police do seem to be picking it up, and they're able to go back to the applicant and get the setback done, and quite readily it seems. So they're willing to do it, and it can be done in a matter of weeks. So we're not going to delay the process too much if we see this. So I think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Anybody else? Are you proposing to object to this application because it's not set back?
I'll quote the guideline paragraph in the objection.
And the ritual, yeah.
Yeah, which line? Set back and set down.
So I'd like to second that. Councillor Lemon, and can I have show of hands?
That's objected to. Unanimous.
LW-23/0760 Old School House, Upper Belgrade Road. Demolition of existing side porch, replacement of single-storey side infill extension to connect existing outbuilding to main dwelling, removal of existing dormers with installation of replacement dormers at rear and side elevations and 2 additional side doors, removal of existing roof light with installation of 2 roof lights at the side elevation and 1 at the front elevation, alterations to fenestration and side elevation and internal layout, recladding of roof at the ground floor level and extension of driveway at the front elevation. Who would like to lead on this application? Councillor Coleman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. When you read all that like that, you just think, oh my goodness, that's a lot. But then when I looked at the actual plans itself, it's actually quite an improvement to the building, and the way the dormers are, one door is off to one side, it's 3, makes it more aesthetically pleasing, so I recommend supporting the application.
Thank you.
I think that the front door, which is the most visible, it's going to be replaced. At the moment, it's too large, it almost overlaps. It's going to be a new one, a little bit rickety at the moment. And it's going to be slightly smaller so that it fits in with the roof there. And that's the most visible part of the property from the road, so that's an improvement as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, reading the application, I think the last major conversion was a 20th century flooding in the 20s, so it's over 100 years. They probably need to, structurally, they probably need to do some work anyway, that's what I was going to say. So we'll tidy up, it could be a good job once it's done, but it needs that extra bit, as it was an old school anyway, it was a good school, lots of that, so I think it will be good once the school gets, all the work does get done, and make it sound for the future.
It's in the East Manchester conservation area as well.
Yeah, so
Actually, so it's bonus.
So you seconded?
yeah, I'm happy to.
Can I have show of hands of supporting this application?
Supported unanimously.
LW-23/0533, 61 Green Drive, Bishopstone, raising of the roof height to provide first floor extension. Would like to lead on this application. Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. These are sets of bungalows, and although they're possibly classed as detached, they are joined by garages, which so they are semi-detached, I would say, and raising one of the properties, suddenly you're going to have an off-balance appearance. And this isn't, you know, so there are a few sets of these double bungalows along this, next to each other on this road. But also, it's in the area that is, as it hard to view, and there are stipulations that the area property shouldn't be allowed to raise their roof in order for the other properties to have that view, which is why the conservation were put in when they were first built. So I would be objecting to this.
Thank you, Councillor Corbyn. Any other comments?
No, I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, I think where you've gone along the road and people have made similar changes, then you could go along with it. But the big issue there was the view, and I'm quite sure that you know there would be.
Yeah, I think I worked out that it will be doubling the size of the height, the ridge height, and those bungalows were roofs, and they, you know, to be lower.
Yeah, there was a reason for that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Designed to retain views.
And sort of street seats.
And the lopsided views on the streets. So there's two issues.
Proposed by Councillor Bourman, seconded by Councillor Martwell. And can I have a show of hands, please?
1, 2, 3, 4. That's unanimous.
Planning applications received Monday the 15th of January. LW/24/0014, Seven Sisters, Alfriston Road. Advertisement consent applications. I won't read it all out, but first, signage. Who would like to read on this one? Councillor Munn?
Yes, I'm obviously welcome the application. It's now Tesco Co-op, obviously, as it was going to be the co-op. There's no one, there's haven't decided yet when I walked past earlier today. But basically, what's in front of us with the sign, I thought if the dimensions right, I was happy. But I'm still not sure it should we have 3 years down in. It's the limited one, I was never know if it's the right quota. Apart from that, I'm happy. It's the quota of the limited ones, that's the question.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment?
I think without a special designation of the area, it would be difficult to resist a standard approach. It seems to be standard. Near or in a conservation area, that would be difficult. I'm not saying it's a low grade area. It's a nice building, and it's in secret, so it must be okay in the area. But as I say, there's not often justification in opposing these unless for some special reason.
I'm happy that I did it just to figure out that's fine.
You propose it to school?
Absolutely.
Is that going to second that?
So there's two planning applications, right?
Yes, I'm doing them separately. Thank you. So it's supported, proposed by Councillor Hanneman, seconded by Councillor Bourman. Can I have a show of hands, please?
That's currently unanimous. Supported unanimous. Councillor Davis.
LW/24/0015, the Seven Sisters, Alfriston Road, and this is installation of a steel MOE door and one protection handrail with low height access gate and 2 by ramrod bollards. Who'd like to read on this application? Councillor Hanneman?
Thank you again. Yes, I'm obviously familiar with that particular establishment as such. I mean, looking at the picture, it still seems weird, seeing what they're trying to do to it, because you know it has been done before. But I think it seems very standard, and it's just what we have to do with to protect vulnerable buildings like this one. There's potential, especially any time down there, so I'm supporting.
Councillor Gordon? Thank you. And there's no other comments, can I have a show of hands as support?
Supported unanimously.
LW/24/0022, 2 Sterling Avenue, erection of a single-storey rear side extension. Would you like to lead on this one? Councillor Markwell.
Well, I think it's all right. It's single story. It's not going past the boundary. As far as I can see. It's got quite a bit of room, but yeah, which makes people want to fill it up. So it's kind of, as long as they keep within their boundary line, it's kind of, that was my only concern, but I'm sure they will.
Any more councillor?
But I mean, I've got a quick answer up, but I mean, it's very substantial, but the same as it's on its corner as it is, so I support it.
So that's a bit of character to the...
Yeah, the next step we're going to do at the end, yeah. It gives a bit of character.
Any other comments? So can I propose it to support it? Thank you, Councillor. And seconded by Councillor Marwell. Can I have a show of hands, please?
That's supported unanimously.
LW/24/0037 133 North Way. Retrospective application for 5 by Sun Tube skylights. I must admit I had to look this one up because it wasn't what I first thought it was. Who would like to lead on? Councillor Cannon.
Use of solar tubes, quite innovative. It's fine. Things lighted.
Yeah.
Just suggest that it's a retrospective application. It's probably because the tubes alter the roof sufficiently for it to come within. It's a very minor point. I think if somebody installing these, they probably would have the justification thinking that permission wasn't needed, but for some reason it's been spotted. I don't think there's any issue in relation to it. It's a very minor adjustment to the level of the roof. So I don't think there's any harm in that at all.
And they are on the side, aren't they?
They're on the side.
Yeah.
Yes, stick out.
Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to second it. I don't like retrospective planning applications normally, but when I looked at it, I thought, it's like, it was surprising it actually needs it. Yeah. So I'm quite happy to support something like that.
Thank you. Any other comments? So can I show of hands of support in this application?
That's supported unanimously.
Which leads us on to tree works. The first one, TW/24/0002. That's already been decided and supported. TW/24/0009/TCA 9 Croft Lane, and that's to fell a sycamore. Councillor Buchanan.
Yes, this report, I couldn't find any documents.
I was going to abstain because I couldn't open the document either.
Couldn't open it.
back to the bad old days of sort of silent tree applications. We can just...
Can we ask for a reason?
We can go back to Lewis and say that there was no information on the application and ask that they ensure that there's sufficient information posted on the site, to enable us to come to a decision. We've had to do that before.
Yeah.
There's been an improvement lately, but there's always these cases that fall between, and so I suggest we just make a polite but firm request that the information, if we're notified of the application, there's sufficient information to accompany it, to enable us to come to a decision.
Members happy with that?
Yeah.
Can I have a proposal second, please? Thank you. Councillor London, Councillor Marble. And show of hands, please. Thank you. That leads us on to the update report on page 32. And you are asked to note, unless there's any questions, Jeff, would you like to make
Well, I should mention briefly there's an application involving setting back and setting down an extension which we objected to, which and you'll see there are objections set out for the benefit of members, and still to find out see the objection raised and see what the Lewis officer's comment was in his report on the decision. So, as I say, they agree with his assessment, the assessment plans have been amended, and that's been the case with about 5 or 6 applications over the last 6 months, which is the encouraging action that's sort of been where our design guidelines, which we know are useful, have been acknowledged to be the same by Lewis District Council. So other than that, there's just these 2 appeals. The Florence House appeal was being circulated. That's before Christmas. It seems like a long time ago now, but that was obviously a welcome success. And the Martello Cottage one is this tree on the corner of Crooked Lane and the top of Crooked Lane that I mentioned a few meetings ago. There'd been a very belated appeal to an application which came in 2021, which we were never notified of, and the committee decided just to leave that to Lewis District Council to deal with. But it was refused by Lewis District Council and has gone to an appeal which is going to a hearing tomorrow at the Marine Workshop. So obviously the house owner is very determined in this case, but again, I think members will be happy just to leave this to Lewis District Council's tree experts to argue out at the hearing.
So just like Robert Chair, does Miss May go to expert and then there's someone from Mr. Council to expert and that's how it works?
Yeah, I might just want to do it herself. Really, it's a question of getting an independent inspector out there to have a look at it. But that will hopefully satisfy her, whichever way the decision goes. But she's obviously very determined. But as I say, I don't think it's anything that we need to be concerned about. Well, obviously when I get a decision, I'll relate it back to you. Unless anybody's interested in the way tree works hearings operate, in which case they can go on to Marine Workshops tomorrow. At 10 o'clock.
Thank you. Unless there's any comments, can I have a show of hands to note the report? That's noted. Thank you. So that concludes the meeting at